Now we're going to be addressing the question of whether America is the promised land based upon the Apocrypha. So a number of individuals identifying as Hebrew Israelites specifically are identifying America as the promised land based upon a passage in this book of 2nd Esdras. Again, this is one of those Apocrypha books. So we're going to look at the passage. We're going to look at this construct of Ar-Zar-Rath, okay, to get a better understanding of that identity and also the extent to which that identity may or may not be extended to the place known as the Americas. It's important to keep in mind when thinking about this idea of the promised land that the assertion is wherever the land is, that it is land that has been given to an entity known as Abraham or Abram in Scripture, and then that land passed down to Isaac and Jacob and the descendants of Jacob. What's troubling about this dynamic is that there are a number of individuals that claim the promised land is in various places. 1 minute, the promised land is in Asia. 1 minute, the promised land is in Africa. The next minute, the promised land is in Europe. And as we've already indicated, America appears to be the final frontier. And so what is actually being asserted is that the entire earth belongs to Abraham. And so therefore the entire earth, based upon this theory, belongs to the descendants of these 12 or 13 sons and grandsons of Jacob. In other words, this leaves nothing for anyone else. So it's a very interesting theory, but it comports with the Jacob narrative starting from the beginning with the deception of Isaac and the usurpation of Esau. And so what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at this word that's supposed to be the conflation of America. We're also going to look at the word Esdras very quickly, and then we're going to look at this passage that has given people the idea that America is their promised land or their land of promise. And then we're going to see if you come away with the same thing based upon that passage. So the first thing I want to look at is the etymology of Esdras. We already have a problem here with this etymology of Esdras. It indicates here that Esdras has a Portuguese origin. You can see it also over here in the Greek, but this is definitely, this word is definitely not coming out of the Hebrew specifically. It's not coming out of the Greek. It is a Portuguese word. Okay, so when you see a Portuguese word and you see anything related to the Portuguese and the Americas, one of the first things you should be thinking about is colonization, Moriscos, Moranos, so forth and so on. And so what we have here again is this Esdras being a Portuguese word or a Portuguese derivative or variation, and supposed to be of the name Ezra. And so E-Z-R-A. And of course you can see how that might be the case. You can see that with the Greek, and you can also see it with the Portuguese there. So when we look in Strong's Concordance, we do find some evidence of this construct of this Ar-Zar-Reth or Azareth. So in Strong's 777, very interesting, it indicates that Artza means to the land, toward the land, groundward. So in other words, it's a name that means land or earth. Okay, so no specific land or earth, simply land or earth. And it is coming from Eretz, which also means land or earth. And so the Ar-Zar-Reth is basically land, earth, earth. And so all of it together is about this construct of land or earth. And this is the word that individuals are saying is the word that indicates the Americas. It's also important to keep in mind that Columbus didn't discover mainland America. And so when talking about his discovery, we are talking about a discrete place in terms of this discovery. And so it's very confusing that individuals are conflating certain islands with the mainland of the Americas with respect to this analysis in particular. And so you can see also that Arza is the name of an Israelite, okay? And so when one is looking at this idea of finding the Americas and it really being Arzareth, individuals are basically saying that it's a place that's named after this particular entity, an Israelite, okay? So it would be Israelite land is what is being asserted. And so the assertion is that the land in one way or another is named with this individual, or even perhaps named after the individual. So we're going to use a very easy to read version of 2nd Esdras. This is 2nd Esdras 13, starting at 13. And the title of this particular chapter is The Man from the Sea. Now, in this text, there are visions that are occurring. And so, therefore, the text is very esoteric. It's sometimes a little bit more esoteric than some other books that are actually in the scripture, but it is esoteric. And so there's this discussion about these visions and about what the visions mean. So we're going to start our look at this whole conversation in 39. This is where individuals start to see this connection, okay? And so it indicates, and as for your seeing him gather to himself another multitude that was peaceable, these are the 10 tribes which were led away from their own land into captivity in the days of King Hoshea, in other words, Hosea, whom Shalmaneser, the king of the Assyrians, led captive. He took them across the river. It doesn't say sea, but sometimes there is conflation between river and sea, particularly when it's a large river, like the river Nile or the Euphrates. That's another issue. Some of these words are not actually in scripture, and so they are sort of new constructions, and we can talk about that, such as the Nile River. Okay, and it goes on to indicate, and they were taken into another land. So we're going to stop there and change the slide here. At 41, it indicates, but they formed this plan for themselves, that they would leave the multitude of the nations and go to a more distant region where mankind had never lived. Number 42. That there at least they might keep their statutes, which they had not kept in their own land. Okay, so there's this, of course, suggestion that they went somewhere and they were able to keep their customs, keep their laws, statutes, and commandments in this new place. 43, it indicates, and they went in by the narrow passages of the Euphrates River. Okay. So here it is implicating a specific river, the Euphrates. Now, admittedly, the Euphrates has popped up in more than one place on these maps, and so that is noteworthy. And what's also noteworthy is that one of the places that the Euphrates popped up was on the west coast of Africa. Okay, it goes on to state at 44, for at that time the Most High performed signs for them and stopped the channels of the rivers until they had passed over. Through that region there was a long way to go, a journey of a year and a half. And that country is called Arzareth. Okay? And so this Arzareth is supposed to be America. And this passage that I just read to you is supposed to be the proof that America has been given to the 10 lost or dispersed tribes of Israel. What's also interesting about this is that the same individuals claim that the 10 lost tribes or dispersed tribes went into Europe and became the kings or the monarchs on the thrones of various countries in Europe. And so it's very difficult to reconcile this at this point, okay? Because by asserting that the 10 lost tribes were promised the Americas, what it does is it gives license to those 10 purported lost tribes coming out of Europe to lay claim to the Americas. And so it's a very interesting dynamic going on there. But there we have it with the passage, and it's really up to you for you to figure out whether or not that all hangs together for you. Do you see this narrative, this pathway, as indicating America is Arzareth? That's the first thing. And do you see in here that Arzareth, America, is the land promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and specifically these 10 tribes? Because the 10 tribes are distinct. That's another kingdom, by the way. They are distinct from the kingdom of Judah. So you have the kingdom of Israel. That would be these 10 tribes. And then you have these 3 tribes that are the kingdom of Judah. And so they have different kings in the narrative, different family groups in these narratives with respect to these kingdoms. But in this narrative, there's the assertion by those who are asserting that Arzareth is America. The assertion is that America is the land that has been promised to these 10 northern tribes. Now, what's also interesting about this is that sometimes people are latching on to these things because they have not read scripture, okay? And so you need to really reconcile what's going on in the regular scripture with what is being presented in the Apocrypha. Some of the narrative in the original scripture, it's really daunting, and it might be discouraging for many people. And so that might be a part of the creation of these Apocrypha books, because then it gives hope, perhaps, that people might not have seen in the Old Testament. And so when the Old Testament closes, it doesn't seem to give many of the people a lot of hope. And so perhaps with the Apocrypha, it does that. And that's outside of the New Testament, because again, remember, there are parts of the Apocrypha that serve to just nullify the entire New Testament. And so we're going to look to see if there's any evidence of Arzareth being America. And so we've identified some places that have the name Arza or Arsa. So we have Arsa with the S versus the Z in Romania, Connecticut, and Italy. Okay, there are also some place names that have been found with the ARZA. One place name is in Montenegro. Another place name is in South Sudan. Another place name is in Spain. And another place name in Tibet for this Arza. And so far we don't have one individual discrete place with this Arza name. And quite frankly, I don't see where, based upon the narrative that we have, that America is Arzareth. It may be hopeful thinking, wishful thinking, and all of that. But what's disturbing about a number of these narratives is that there seems to be a problem with boundaries. There seems to be a serious problem with allowing people to have something for themselves. There seems to be a repetitive need to take the identities of others or impose the identity of self onto others. So this is a rather infantile practice, quite frankly. And it goes on and on and on with these colonizing situations. And so, with respect to the second Esdras suggesting that America is the promised land, based upon that passage, I don't see it. However, perhaps when you read it, you see it. Now, some people will, in order to make this all make sense, they will refer to all sorts of narratives that have been created post-colonization that suggest that a number of places in America serve as the old world. And so they will use these colonizer names and use that as the proof that America is the old world. There is no old world, okay? All of the earth has existed. The oceans have existed. The rivers have existed. So all of this essentially is the old world, quite frankly. Another thing that's concerning about the more recent assertions of America being the old world is that with that assertion is that America is the motherland. And so America being the old world suggests that America is the motherland. Here is the con game that goes with that. If America is the motherland, what do you think the implications are? If America is the motherland, that means that America belongs to everyone. It doesn't matter if someone is identifying as American Indian, does it? Because if America is the motherland, everyone is an American Indian. Are you following what I'm saying? Okay, so if America is the motherland, America is the old world, and America is the land for everyone, there is no such thing as a foreigner. When individuals come to America, they are not colonizing America, they are simply coming home. And if they are simply coming home and taking what rightfully belonged to their ancestors according to this old world narrative, then there's nothing that anyone should have to say about it. Do you see where this is going? Okay, so when entertaining these conversations about America being the old world, you need to take your reasoning to another place. You need to keep going with this reasoning about America being the old world and America being the motherland. You also need to ask the question of, so what was Europe, what was Asia, and what was Africa if America was the end all be all? If there was nothing else but America, what was going on in those other places? What were their histories? And furthermore, you need to consider the source. Where are you getting this information from? And what purpose does it serve for this information to be put forth? Who is it benefiting? That's the question. Who benefits from these narratives?